evening and welcome to the Kansas Legislature. We're live at the studio in Bunker Hill with Smoky Hills Public Television, and we're going to talk about what's been happening in Topeka. We were off a couple weeks, so we have a lot to catch up on. I'm your host this evening, Becky Kaiser. I am a reporter with Hays Post, Eagle Radio News in Hays with the Eagle Communications team there, and I'm also a fellow at the Docking Institute of Public Affairs at Fort Hays State University. First of all, I'd like to introduce our legislators joining us this evening. We always appreciate people being here, and to my very far left is Representative Clarke Sanders, who of course is from Salina, that's district number 69. And then closest to me on my left is Senator John Dahl from Garden City, and that is district number 39. So welcome both of you gentlemen. And as we usually do, I'd like to start, Representative Sanders, if you would tell us a little bit about what committees you're on and some of the hot topics that you're dealing with. And we have passed turnaround. You might explain what that is as well.
Well, I'm on 3 committees. On the House side, most of us serve on 3 committees. My morning committee is Fed and State, and my 1:30 committee is Higher Ed Budget, and I'm the vice chair of that. This is my first year to be on Higher Ed Budget. And then my afternoon committee is Taxation. And so now that we've passed turnaround, we can't get any bills coming out of any committee that isn't exempt. Now there's a workaround for that. A lot of times a bill will get introduced into tax or some other committee that is one of the 4 exempt committees, and then it'll move to Health and Human Services or Ag or whatever committees. But we're to the point where we're basically working the existing bills that we have.
All right. And Senator Dahl, a little bit about the committee work that you're doing.
I'm on Ag, which we're dealing with water. Yesterday we had about hemp. It's an interesting topic.
Huh.
And then I have local government and ethics and commerce. So I have 4 committees and they're interesting.
Well, you mentioned hemp, and I know that has been something that was really exciting. I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a lot of interest in it, and then it just kind of fell off, and now we're back to changing some things around that might make it more interesting for farmers.
You know, a lot of times they say, well, the fees are just way too high. They're out of line. And fees are nothing but a tax. It's a indirect, it's a tax to the producer. So they had taxes for the people that are producing it and people who are processing it, and it was the taxes were so high, and the profitability of it wasn't there yet because we just don't know enough about it to get it. So there's few processing plants, but we need to get it down to so farmers would have an equal chance of growing it. But then the rules and regulations that they put on it to get it passed, it was really stringent. So we're trying to loosen that. We don't want to open it up and just be Colorado or something like that, but we want to make it so it gives our farmers another option to make money.
And hemp shouldn't be confused with marijuana.
Yes, what's the difference?
Well, what we're talking about here is, I think the phrase for it is industrial hemp, and you make stuff out of it. You make rope. It's amazing how hard it can get, and so you can make almost like bricks out of it for construction. You can make sunglasses out of it. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can make out of hemp, and I believe what Senator Dahl is talking about is the restrictions are to keep it so it's not a product that you can use like a narcotic. So when you're talking about marijuana, you're talking about something entirely different than when you're talking about hemp.
Well, while we're on the topic, we haven't heard anything about whether or not medical marijuana is a possibility. Has that discussion come back up?
You know, it's funny. I heard before the session began that we were going to be working a medical marijuana bill. And yet, once the session started, I haven't heard anything about it. So I don't, to the best of my knowledge, nothing's going to be done with medical marijuana, and certainly nothing's going to be done with recreational marijuana. So there are a lot of people who seem to be in favor of at least medical marijuana, but I don't think it's happening this session.
We're going to have a hearing on it Monday, I believe. They were promised a hearing, see if it transpires, but I'm told that we will have a hearing on it Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Oh, okay.
Of medical marijuana.
Of the
not-
medical marijuana.
Not recreational at all.
And then, of course, how the process works is just because you have a hearing doesn't mean there's a committee vote on it. And if there's not a committee vote, that's the end of it, at least for this session. And even if there is a committee vote, and even if the committee votes in the affirmative, that doesn't mean it'll get to the floor of the Senate. So there's a lot of hoops that you'd have to jump through. And at this point, there'd be no time to work it in the House, but it could go into a conference committee.
I'm curious too, back to industrial hemp, how does Kansas compare, or I mean, we're not doing it yet, but are there other states that are really working this as an industry?
I think most states are.
Ah.
We're all around us. There's a lot of have it. I'm not sure about Nebraska, Missouri, but they have both medical and they have everything. Oklahoma does, Colorado does, most states do. I'm not sure about Texas doesn't, and I'm not sure about Nebraska, but well over half of our states have it, industrial hemp. That is George Washington's go-to crop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what his major crop was when he was farming, when he wasn't being president.
I did not know that. See, that's another reason why you need to watch the show and
Yeah.
tune in, is you can learn something as you go along, which is really great. And if you do have a question or a comment for our legislators this evening, that toll-free number, 1-800-337-4788. Well, let's talk dollars and cents and budget and taxes. Representative Sanders, there was some, and actually in the Senate, a 6-hour debate about a flat tax plan. And we've heard about this before. What do you think?
Well, first off, there was some committee work done prior to the session beginning. And we hit the ground running on a major tax overhaul in the state of Kansas. And the reason for that was everybody, 165 of us, know that taxes is the #1 issue. So we wanted to get something done early on. And the House passed our version of the bill out within the first 2 weeks. And that's just unbelievable to have a bill that big in 2 weeks. The Senate passed it a week later, and then before the ink was dry on it, the governor vetoed it. We tried to override it in the House, and we couldn't get it done, so it died. So that's the first place that we're at. Now, the governor likes to describe it as a single rate tax plan. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's more of a dual rate tax plan, because there are something like 240,000 Kansans that are tax filers who pay zero. 0% is a rate, and there are a significant number of Kansas tax filers who pay zero.
And is that because their income is just that low?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of those people are retired, a lot of them are students, and they have low incomes, but they still end up filing taxes, and they end up at zero. Now, the current situation is that the low bracket is $0 to $15,000. That's at 3.1%. Then 16,000 to 30,000 is 5.25, and then above 30,000 is 5.7. So our initial plan was to have the 0 and the 5.25. Again, I believe, from my perspective, the governor mischaracterizes as a single rate when it's actually a dual rate. That was vetoed, and we couldn't override the veto in the House because some people were thinking that it wasn't sustainable. So we've got a new plan, and that would make the rate initially 5.7%, which is what is currently the upper end, but it would make that 5.7% for everybody. And then
Not
another,
for the 0 for 15, they're still 0.
yeah, 0 to 15 are still 0.
Okay.
But then 5.7, and then over time, every year it would step down, and it would eventually get down to, I believe, 5.45, are the numbers I've heard. It would also raise the standard deduction for both single and dual tax filers, and it would be more of a standard deduction than was under the original plan. Accelerating the food sales tax to 0 would happen. Right now, if nothing changes, food sales tax is going to go to 0 January 1st of 2025. And people sometimes get a little confused about that, because when we say it'll go to 0, what we're talking about is the state portion
Right.
of the food sales tax. There are still going to be local taxes, most places, that you would pay on food. But we would accelerate that, and then the exemption for your valuation of your home would go up from $40,000 to $100,000. So if this plan were to pass, the first $100,000 valuation on your home would be exempted. So if you had a $200,000 home, you'd pay like you had a $100,000 home. If your home was worth less than $100,000, again, you wouldn't have any state tax to pay on that, property tax.
So those are some of the advantages of what this plan would bring. But what do you say to the critics who still are concerned that you're taxing everybody, that it is an advantage to people who make the most money, and it's still hurting those who are lower income?
Well, that's an age-old debate, and I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you tax everybody who makes over $15,000 at the same rate, the rich pay more, the poor pay less, and the middle income pay somewhere in between what the rich and the poor pay. I mean, you don't buy anything with a rate. You buy it with actual dollars. And the actual dollars that the rich kick in is considerably higher than what people who make them under 20,000 kick in. I mean, it just is. Now, some people say it's not fair because they should pay a lower rate in addition to paying lower dollars. I understand that philosophy, but I don't agree with it. I think it's fair.
Senator Dahl, I'm trying to remember, don't our surrounding states have flat tax rates, many of them?
One, Colorado does, they want to get rid of it. The other states around us have a lower rate tax than we do, but they don't have a flat tax. Colorado has a flat tax, but I have some good friends that are in the legislature. They'd do anything they could to get rid of it. The other thing with the flat tax, I hired 2 accountants that I didn't know. I just knew they were excellent accountants, but had no skin in the game. Gave them all the information I got, from this side of the fence, this side of the fence. Okay, they bring it together, they bring me the numbers. I said, okay, tell me what this means. With that plan, by late 27, I just stayed because looking at it, I thought it was pretty obvious it wasn't going to work. I said, when do we run out of money? And they said late 27, early 28. We're back to last decade. So he and I respectfully disagree with him. But the other one, this flat tax you're talking about now, 5.7, it's starting off with, if you recall, the people that are in 15 to 30 are paying 5.25. So till it gets down, it never gets down back to 5.25. But they are getting some exemptions. They're going to pay less because of some different things, but it's definitely leans not favorably for the middle class, in my opinion.
So the big question becomes, and the governor has made it pretty clear, I'd say, that she's not going to accept what she calls a flat tax. Now, she's also said she'd like to see the food sales tax, exemptions accelerated to zero, and yet every chance she has to veto it, she does. In 2019, she had an opportunity to take it to zero immediately. It passed out of both the House and the Senate. She vetoed it. So I'm not sure if you can always believe what she says, but if she does veto it, and we can't override the veto, and part of the thought process of raising it to, there are some people that, and I think Senator Dahl is one of them, and I certainly know there's some people on the House side that have trouble with what they consider the sustainability of this plan. And when it was 5.25, it would be more sustainable at 5.7, but is it enough to get enough people on board to override the veto? But the question becomes, if we pass this out, and I think we will, and the governor vetoes it, which I think she will, then what happens? And the kind of the scuttlebutt is we're going to have a special session. Now, have you heard that?
Well, there's first of all, it's going to pass both houses, but there's absolutely no chance that she will not veto it. And there's absolutely no chance that we override her veto. They're losing more in the House. They were the one that stopped it first time. We stopped it. I mean, we stopped it first time. You stopped last year. We stopped it. This year we didn't have to vote on it because they got it stopped. Flat tax. We won't see a flat tax. It's just not going to pass this year.
Are we going to see a special session if it doesn't?
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have my crystal ball's not working.
I'm with you. But have you heard that too?
Yeah, but just important things to me on this thing. We're talking about these deductions and everything. One of the big things that I look for in my district is one of the exempt things we want to take out is tax on Social Security. They already pay it, and so my area, other than Garden City, but is elderly. We have more elderly population. Farmers are getting bigger and they're getting incorporated. Our kids are leaving and they're not coming back. So Social Security has, we need to get rid of that tax, and that's very important to me. When I look at whether I'm going to vote yes or no, that's that's a key issue for me. Now, I'm not saying I'll die on a sword with it, but it's pretty high up there for me.
But I believe under the plan, state income tax on Social Security is eliminated.
But there's going to have to be some things that are leaving the plan, and the talk I've heard is, some of the things that I don't know if they're using it for a threat or if they're real, but some of the things they're talking about is like Social Security and the exemption, $100,000 exemption, because right now, we can say all we want, but if I go to two of the top accountants in our area that I don't hardly know, and then I go to a financial analyst, one of the best in the state, from what I understand, and they give me the same numbers and the same answers. I'm an old basketball coach. I'm not smart, but I'm smart enough to know to go to people and get the information, and that was the information I got.
Well, we'll see what happens. This will be very interesting.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yes, exactly. And if you have a comment on about the situation, please give us a call. That's 1-800-337-4788, and you can join in and weigh in with your opinion. We'll see what happens there. And I was thinking about talking about things that are coming up, and you were talking about Social Security, which made me remember that I saw where the House and Senate have both agreed that they are going to have hearings about the possibility of expanding Medicaid. So that's going to happen?
It will happen because it was promised, I believe. But I would say the chances of Medicaid expansion, me getting the opportunity to vote for it.
On the floor of the Senate.
On the floor. is zero. Maybe, yeah, zero. I'll go with that. I'm not even going to go higher than that. I would love the opportunity to vote for it. I think it's critical for us out in western Kansas, well, in any rural Kansas. But I don't think I'll get that opportunity. Hearings are going to do that to pacify the people that, because it's proven that like 70% of the Kansans want Medicaid expansion. So everybody's demanding it. Some of us don't want it, so they're going to give it to, well, we had the hearings, and they can use that as a political, we're having election season. You know, they're not going to,
Yeah, that's
that
true.
changes things. So they said, well, we had a hearing. It just didn't make it to the floor. We run out of time. So what they're doing is, I think they're running a clock out on Medicaid expansion, bills like that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's true. Everybody's up for re-election, right?
Yes, all 165 of us.
So-
And I would agree with the senator that there will be hearings, probably on both sides, both chambers, but I will not be voting for it one way or the other on the floor of the Kansas House.
I can't wait to vote for it.
But you don't think you'll get a chance?
Well, I would love the opportunity.
Okay, so if you had to pick one, which is more likely? You getting to vote on Medicaid expansion, or the governor signing something that has a flat tax in it?
She's the one asking the questions.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I would say
With your
both of them are
gaze
zero.
into your crystal ball there, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about health and medical issues, and I wanted to bring up something that you mentioned before we went on the air, Senator, talking about drug programs and that concern small pharmacies, again, in rural Kansas, with small independent pharmacies. What's going on in that area?
I can say without hyperbole that within 10 years, we will not have independent drugstores, pharmacies. They are being big boyed by Walmart, Dillon's, and it's called PBMs. And the big ones get PBMs, so what they get a bigger rebate on drugs that exchange the middleman. The middleman makes more money, and they get more money selling in bulk, so they're going to those big stores. They don't want to mess with these independent stores. So I've been told and investigated, and you talk to lobbyists there, they will be gone. And so we have people like in Elkhart, Kansas, if you drive 4 hours and 30 minutes east, you're at Wichita. It's just, how are they going to get it? So what we're going to have to do is they're going to have to do mail. That's what their answer is. Well, we're just going to do mail drugs, mail the drugs. So we're going to be mailing dangerous drugs to elderly people without someone telling them how to take this drug. We're going to be mailing out oxycodone, all these pain pills. What could possibly go wrong with this? It's an issue. So last night, it's some hour, it all starts bogging. We were able to pass out, to go to you guys, so they get the opportunity to vote. They used to say, big boys had it, so they couldn't pass. They passed a law in Arkansas to allow, that said that the PBMs have to pay the same to the independents as they do to the big boys. And Georgia passed it. Well, they said it'd never stand up in court. Arkansas, just 2 weeks ago, I believe, passed it in court, and it survives. So it is constitutional unless they take it to the Supreme Court. I think that was Arkansas Supreme Court, so it'd have to go now to the United States Supreme Court. And for us in rural Kansas, this is a great big deal. This is not a little deal. This is a big deal. And if anybody that's aware of the situation, I think would agree with me 100% that 5 to 10 years, we won't have independent pharmacies.
That's sad to hear.
Well, it's reality of where we're going. It's get big, get small with a specialty, or get out. That's what business is being about anymore.
You talked about the mail out of the prescriptions being a solution, or thought to be a solution, but that reminds me of, I've been hearing about the concerns that our mail service, obviously federal program, is not very reliable these days, and that could present another program or problem.
We've slimmed down, like all our mail will go to either Amarillo or Denver. I don't know where Salina goes, perhaps.
Goes down to Wichita.
Okay, then we have some that goes to Kansas City, and that I think in the southeast it goes to Joplin or Kansas City. You know, that gets split out. You know, I'll mail a letter to my wife, a Valentine's card, and it would have to go to Denver before she gets it. I mean, we've downsized to the point where we're not efficient. Downsizing's good, becoming inefficient's not.
Can the state do anything about that? I know that
No, it's a
some of our
federal thing.
federal legislators are looking at it and concerned, but state really has no.
We can pass a resolution. We can say, we as the Kansas Legislature urges our congressional delegation to reform the mail system, and that and a quarter will get you a very small candy bar.
You know what, something's kind of interesting though, and the answer to these, like UPS started, FedEx started. I wonder, I don't know if a person could make it, but you wonder sometimes what would happen if typical mail would go private. I can't see how they could make it. They would be very expensive, but some people would pay that expense in order to get their letter the next day like it's supposed to. But I can't see that happen. That's just shoot, I'm talking too much.
You're living in the past, sir.
Yeah, we had good guys on horses and such, right?
There you go.
Let's talk about some of the spending that the Senate gave initial approval to, $25 billion in state spending after their lengthy debate, including some monies to, speaking of things that the state doesn't have a whole lot of control on, but is wanting, at least in this budget, to help with, is to send some money to allow Kansas National Guard troops to help out at our Texas border.
My opinion, if the Texas governor asked our governor to send troops, and our governor sends troops, or she doesn't talk to him, we decide just to send troops. In my, being a government teacher and history teacher, to me that's called an invasion. You can't do that without the federal government. The federal government has to be in charge of federal troops. So we want to send, we're so short on special education right now. Most schools, like 4A school back home, they're paying $500,000 a year just to cover the cost of their legal with special education. And everybody brags about Texas not having income tax. And we're going to send them $20 million. They have a problem down there. There's no question about it. Federal government needs to step up and help them. No problem. But, you know, if they would have a 2-cent income tax, they could build a wall of gold. You know, they don't need our money because, or else either that or be quiet about zero income tax, because that really drives me nuts. They're asking for money and then they don't have any income tax.
There are 14 states that have sent Texas National Guard troops from their states. We voted on a resolution to urge the governor to offer to send troops. And you can't just unilaterally send troops. You've got to make an offer. And I'm probably 90% certain if the Governor Kelly was to reach out to Governor Abbott and offer to send troops, she'd take him up on it, or he'd take her up on it.
We have 150 troops down there right now. Oh. What I've heard is that they're at Arizona border. That's what people have told me, because I know we have 150 troops there, but to guard the border. But I'm told, so I call people who I think I know that would know, and they say loose lips sink ships. You know, so we don't know if they're in Arizona or in Texas, but we do have 150 troops of our boys, girls from Kansas, on the southern border. What state? That's up to debate.
We have a phone caller with us now from Russell. Alan is on the line. Alan, you have a comment or a question of our legislators this evening?
Yes, I wanted to explain how the mail service runs here in Russell. If you want to send a bill to say, or a payment 4 blocks away, it still goes all the way to Wichita and comes all the way back. They do no in-house sorting anymore of mail in Russell. And I get my prescriptions from the VA, and there's sometimes that my prescription packages look like they were playing hockey with them.
I think that's everywhere. I think that the sorting of mail, local mail now, is a thing of the past. So I think we can't be upset with your mail postmaster at Russell, because I believe that's probably going on in most of our municipalities in Kansas.
I know in Hayes, it goes off to Wichita
Yeah.
also.
All mail.
Before it comes
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, Senator has a good point. I'm trying to send a greeting card across the street, and I mail it in Salina. If it worked like it should be across the street tomorrow. But it has to go to Wichita first, then it has to come back, then it has to be delivered. That can take 4 or 5 days.
A little bit different. Well, let's talk a little bit more about some things that are specifically earmarked in the budget that the Senate gave initial approval to this week. And I don't know how much people have heard about it out here, but the World Cup is coming to Kansas City, and they're, in this particular rendition of the budget, $28 million earmarked to support that. And I know that Representative Troy Waymaster from here in Bunker Hill has been concerned, as have some other local Western Kansas legislators, about what are you going to do, what are we going to do for Western Kansas? How does this help people who live east of Salina, west of Salina, west of Kansas City? What do we do with this?
I was in the office of I'm sorry, Clark.
Go ahead.
I was in the office of the Lieutenant Governor, who's also the Secretary of Commerce. And I says, you know, Lieutenant Governor, and drew a circle. We put X amount of dollars for Panasonic plant right here. And we put X amount of dollars for this plant that's going just a little bit further south than the Panasonic plant. And we draw this circle up here for the World Cup, and all that has come to nearly, probably over $100 million easy. And I said, in Western Kansas, all we want is shoulders on a road, would be happy, so I'm glad Troy's working on something, but, I was trying to make a point, but I understand, that's, people from Belgium aren't going to come to Garden City to hang out and see the zoo. That's just not something that's going to be on their bucket list, but.
Yeah, they might go to Boot Hill. I know
Yeah.
that's in Dodge,
Yeah.
but my understanding is that the World Cup brings a lot of people, not just the team itself and the officials, on the team, the coaches and the staff and whatnot, but it brings a lot of fans, and they come over and they stay in town a while, like depending on how you're doing, could be up to 30 some odd days. And that when they're not playing, that those people want something to do. And once you run out of things to do in the Kansas City area, where do you go? Well, maybe you go to the Rolling Hills Zoo, just outside of Salina. Maybe you go to Exploration Place in Wichita. Maybe you go to Boot Hill. But because one of the things that they're working on is being sure that there are enough charter buses available to take groups where they want to go. Now, I don't really follow the World Cup. This is information that I've been given, and I'm taking it on faith that it's true, so we'll see.
The other thing with that, though, is, we put $28 million in that. What we're going to get back from restaurants, and what Clark was talking about, restaurants and hotels and entertainment, the tax dollars that's going to generate. I can't fathom in my mind. I just watch. I don't know anything much about soccer. Just when it goes in the net, people go crazy. But this, I don't know if this economic, you've got to spend in order to get back. And I don't know what's what's going to be the economic impact on Kansas, our revenue, tax revenue, if it's $28 million, because I have no idea. Hopefully, there's been studies done by our Commerce Department and people like that, the people that was going to the legislature asking for this, to tell us some kind of numbers that hopefully we get back. But I'm not in the tax committee or that committee, so I never heard any of the numbers. But it would make sense to me that they showed us a chart of what it's going to bring in to the state of Kansas, or what is anticipated by tax revenue on those kind of things.
You know, and the other thought that I have is that soccer is not, or football as it is everywhere except the United States, it's not as big of a sport in this country as it is elsewhere, and we may not know.
It's the biggest spectator sport in the world.
Yes, exactly.
And even though it's not nearly as big here as it is other places, although I've been hearing for literally 45 years, oh, soccer's getting big, and it never, from my perception, seems to get that big in the United States. But what I'm being told, and others are being told, is it doesn't matter, because they bring people with them. People come from Europe, people come from South America, and maybe it's not that big a deal as it could be in the United States, but there's a lot of people that come to countries that host the World Cup, and we're going to be one of them.
I was a coach for a long time. I follow basketball. I've been to a lot of arenas, and I've been to a lot of events. I went to a KC sporting event, that soccer game. It's the most amazing thing in the world. I mean, these fans are standing and screaming the whole time, the whole time. And then for some reason, the clock runs out, but there's more time.
Yeah.
And they just kind of pick the ball up and go home. It was the most incredible thing that I don't understand. But I was asked, I had a guy call me and say, hey, there's a playoff game with Kansas City, the Sporting KC and the St. Louis team. Huge rival, it'd be crazy. Do you want to go? And I said, no. And he said, what? And I said, those people are craziest people I've ever seen. I thought football fans were nuts. They don't hold a candle to these guys. So it might be growing, because that place is packed every game they have, Sporting KC. And just for the experience, you ought to go to one of those games. You won't, if you don't like soccer, you won't go again. But I'm glad I went one time. But
Of course, that's part of the reason it sells out is I think the stadium only holds 20,000. So
well, I bet they could solve.
yeah, but you look at Arrowhead, which 77,000, Kauffman Stadium, a little less than 40,000. So filling a 20,000 seat venue, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not difficult, but that's part of the reason.
Well, we'll see how many fans, new fans maybe, that we develop here in this area. We have on the phone line with us now from Ulysses, William. And William, you have a comment or a question of our legislators this evening?
I do, thank you. I don't know where you're at in your conversation, or if anybody's spoken about the primary, but it bothers me that Kansas has its primary after the decision's essentially been made. Why can't we have our primaries on Super Tuesday? Why not have a national primary to lead up to the actual election? Thank you. I'll listen for your response.
Well, real quick before you go, William, what do you think of the fact that we're having a primary at all? I voted against having a primary. I thought the caucus system was working fine, but I was in the minority.
I like the primary. Not everybody has time to be involved with the caucus. Why not give people a chance to vote, some months before the election, and then we have our however long it is to listen to them.
Right, and I understand what you're saying about wanting to be on Super Tuesday, or better yet, before Super Tuesday. But when I knew it was going to be March 19th, I really was concerned that what would happen has happened, that both sides are wrapped up, the nominees are set on both sides, which again speaks to why we should have been having a caucus still. But I don't think that Kansas had a choice of dates. I think the political parties picked those dates.
I did hear about that, and how. Well, I guess get involved in your local political party.
Yeah.
Would be the answer to that.
And vote. Make sure you
And I
vote.
did. I did even, and it's it's one of the things that makes America great. Is even though we have a slim choice of candidates, we vote. And Russia voted today, and they did have a few candidates, but apparently Putin was the only one that really had any chance of getting votes.
That's right.
Food won in a runaway, huh?
You did.
I don't know. I haven't heard yet.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the news.
I think both of us would look into our crystal
I'll be
balls
down
before
at
that
Ulysses
election.
tomorrow. I'd be happy to wager a Sonic 44, Route 44 on who wins that race if you want.
Thank you, William, for your call this evening. Wanted to check one other point that was made in the proposed budget is state employee salary raises of 5%. How does Kansas compare to other states and how well we pay our state employees?
Our state employees, I think we're about in the median on that. We weren't for a while, but the last 10 years, 7 years, we've really bumped up. But something that's really bothersome to me is that we raised legislators' pay 91% and didn't even vote on it. We gave legislators a 91% pay increase without a vote. To me, there is nothing right about that. And we tried to bring it to a vote there was certain procedures that we had to do, and we had to get like 27 votes in order to have a vote on whether we were going to accept this raise. And they talk about diversity, and I think Clarke would join me with this. They say it's only old retired people can do that. I look at this deal and I see guys in there that would still, I'll bet, get carded to buy a beer. And I'm not talking about a few. The Johnson County delegation, I'll bet you their average age is 35. I would take, if you took all of them together, I don't think it'd be much older than that. I think that they needed a raise. We're getting $88 a day. That, or $88.80 or whatever it is.
$88.66.
Yeah, they needed a raise. But a 91% increase. I don't know where you were at on that, Clarke, but that was real bothersome for me.
Did
Well,
you deserve 91% increase?
no, nobody does. We deserved a raise,
Yeah.
and so the raise, the 88.66, is now going to be $245 a day for those of us fortunate to get to go back. It's too much too quick. My theory would have been, you want to get to $245 a day, do it over a 10-year period. Raise it up a little bit every year for 10 years. The problem that happened was in 2008, everybody in the state of Kansas was given a raise except the legislators. And there hadn't been a raise since prior to 2008. So that's a problem. That's not good.
It's been a lot earlier than 2008.
Yeah. But there was a across the board raise for everybody except the legislators in 2008. So now we all of a sudden tried to fix it at once. And what happened was last year, and I don't know how you voted on this, I voted in favor of getting a commission together that would figure out what the raise should be. But where I misunderstood what was happening was I thought this commission, made up of primarily former legislators, was going to come up with a recommendation that we could either A, vote up, B, vote down, or C, amend to a number that we thought was more reasonable. That isn't what happened. Once they turned in their report, that was it. It was a done deal. Now, the one thing I still don't know about is I've been, the Senate, of course, worked their budget yesterday, but I've been looking at the budget for us, and we're going to work it on Tuesday. There is a line item in there of, I don't want to quote the amount because I don't have it in front of me, but it's significant. It's several $million that is in the budget to take care of this legislative pay increase. Now, does the governor have the ability with her line item to veto that?
I don't think with money she
Okay,
does.
all right.
But the other thing that this impacts too is it's the secondary stuff. This will impact capers, their retirement, and everything else. And so it's just not the raise they're going to get now. It's a gift that keeps on giving, and that's what what raise will do. It's with capers and retirement and such.
Too much, too quick.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, it does attract younger people and people who have different types of jobs that they can get away from. And
You know, teachers, for example, I knew teachers that did this, and you know, you could teach first semester, and most schools would work with you on this, and be a legislator second semester. I knew several teachers who've done this, and there's, you know, I'm not sure. I can remember telling a person, and I wasn't being very polite. This guy was in the house. He was probably us when I was in the house, and we were one of these 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning deals, and we were handing out things to a particular group of Republicans, not all the Republicans, and I didn't fit into that group. And so this guy was handing them out, and he's maybe 23 or 24 years old. I'm sitting there going, you know, you should be giving those papers out to somebody who's dealt with more money than dealing with their allowance. You know, you want somebody who has had experience with their money, experience dealing with these politics. I'm not saying they need to be 65, but I think I don't think age is a factor on this. It is your ability to do the job and do the job right. The other thing for us is if I have kids that are 10, 11, 12 years old and I'm in Garden City and they're there, you know, I'm not going to run. It has nothing to do with what the salary is. It's, you know, I'm going to be there with my kids. When you're in Kansas City, Topeka area, you know, that not only that, when you live in Kansas City and you drive to Topeka and back and forth, you get mileage for that. You can take that mileage out of your income, out of your campaign if you want to. And so there's all these different things that
Well, the
people
state
do.
also gives you mileage.
Yeah, they stay, well, for one trip.
Well, one trip a week, one round
One trip a week,
one
but I'm
round trip
talking
a
about
week.
the 5 other days that they drive there, they can take money
Yeah.
from that. And it's just, you're not, it's like teaching. It's for outcome, not for income, you know? So, you know, and I was teaching for a long time, and it was all about outcome because we weren't getting no income.
And there was a time when there were more teachers in the legislature. We had one from Salina for years and years and years. And what she did was taught the first semester and then took off the second semester, didn't get paid from the school district because she was gone second semester, but got paid for the legislature. Now, I think that this good, bad, or indifferent is going to attract more teachers because if they can work it out in their districts, they'll teach the first semester and then make way more money in the second semester than they would if they stuck to teaching. However, the problem is complicated by there's a teacher shortage in this state
Right.
of about 1,800 teachers. And
Oh.
so I don't think that districts are going to be too fond of somebody who only wants to teach half a year.
I didn't realize we were short that many teachers.
1,800.
1,800, goodness.
It's just awful.
What are we doing to attract more teachers?
Well, one of the things that have been real disappointing with my time in Topeka, I don't feel like we respect teachers, respect public schools, and that sort of thing. It's you know, we take special ed, for example. It's supposed to be funded at 93%. Federal government's supposed to help with that. They're not doing their part. This year on the budget, we just did the budget yesterday, 2 days ago. We did taxes yesterday, and we're at 70% on that. Last year we were at 71%. Next year it's going to be 68%. We're going the wrong direction for kids that need the basic needs, and especially for us in rural Kansas. You know, you might have a kid because there's only one teacher who can deal with this special type kid, and they might have to travel for 30, 40 miles. So the expense gets higher, so you have one teacher that's traveling 40 miles, you know, for this one student. Then people want these private vouchers, and that's fine, that's good, but, you know, I went to a Catholic high college I taught at a Catholic high school for 4 years, and my kids went to a Catholic elementary school. And I started thinking back about this about a week ago. I can't remember one special needs kid or anything in any of those environments. Your private schools, your private vouchers, they take who they want. Private schools, that was great about what was at a private school. If this guy was not a person you wanted at that school because he was causing problems, you just told him where the door was. And you can't do that at a public school. So to compare them is crazy, but they're trying to consolidate by starvation in a way. And I think we saw that around Wilson and all that area just not very long ago.
And I've talked to some Catholic educators who say that Catholic educators, although they're not required like the public schools are, for the most part do take special needs kids. Maybe they just don't have a lot applying or wanting to go or can afford the tuition or whatever, but to characterize the private schools as not taking special needs kids, I don't think is accurate.
Okay, well, they got a little hideout room then, because I've been around Catholic schools my whole life.
There's something that I want to kind of tag on here when we're talking about teachers in Kansas. And Representative Sanders, you might know about this. I don't know. There's a House bill, it's 2521, that would require the State Board of Education to authorize teaching licenses for people who complete an alternative teacher certification program. So in other words, it might involve more people.
So we voted on that this past week. It was, as we like to say in Topeka, a robust debate. And it passed with 78 votes and 40 on the other side. There were, maybe I might be getting those numbers a little wrong, but it passed with 78. And there were 3 people absent, including 2 Republicans. The 2 Republicans who were absent, I'm real sure will vote with us. So that would get us to 80, but we need to get to 84 for a veto override, and I feel very certain the governor's going to override this, and it won't end up going anywhere. But it did pass out of the House with 78 votes.
As she should veto it, because we complain about the performances of public schools, and then we're going to dummy down the teachers. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We should, how you want better education, you get better teachers. You know, I've taught, like I said, I taught in a public school and a private school. I taught in one of the top private schools in the state, in Wichita. It's not the school, it's not the deal, it's the teacher that's teaching, that can gather the kids, can game the kids. It's the teacher that makes the difference in a classroom. They have to have decent administrators, but it's the teacher. So you go to this, you know, as a teacher, it was kind of nice teaching at a private school because I wasn't going to have nasty students. They were going to go away, you know, because they were going to go to North High or they were going to go to Northwest. They weren't going to stay at Carroll. You know, that was just the way it was there. So I, as a former teacher, and have a decent, I think a really decent understanding of both parochial and private schools and public schools, this isn't a good bill.
We have another phone
I voted
caller.
for it. I thought it was a great bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I voted for that bill. I thought it was good.
You vote, okay.
You know,
You
I
like
mean,
it.
one of the things they brought up, the opponents, was that we need to trust our superintendents, and a number of them testified against it. Well, if you're going to trust your superintendent, trust your superintendent. Trust your superintendent to hire good teachers, regardless of how they're certified. If they're a good teacher, there's a mentoring program involved in this. If they don't cut the mustard, they're gone. It's a good bill.
You got to pay them.
Let's go to the phone. We have Jeremy from Cimarron. Your question or comment of our legislator, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'd like to have, I guess my statement would be, I've seen on TV where the Highway Patrol has caught several people, you know, going excessively fast down the highway. When is the state legislature going to start stepping up and giving more abilities to the Highway Patrol to penalize these people more than what they do?
We passed a bill last year that, and of course this is really excessive, but the fines are exponentially higher if you're caught going 100 miles an hour. Now, 100 miles is a lot, and maybe that should be 90 or 85 or something, but we have addressed that.
Any or any comments,
No,
Senator?
the fines are excessive, and each time it goes up, it's like a DUI. Every time that
Yeah.
they get that ticket, it goes higher and higher, and then pretty soon it becomes, they get incarcerated after, what, 4 or 5 of them, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we've run out of time. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us this evening. Thank you for being with us on the Kansas Legislature here on Smoky Hills PBS. We've been talking about what's happening in Topeka as the session starts to wind down. My guest this evening, to my far left, Representative Clarke Sanders from Salina, District number 69, and to my near left, Senator John Dahl from Garden City, District 39. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate what you do, and thanks for that, and we keep up the good work. Everybody appreciates it. Thank you for joining us this evening right here on Smoky Hills Public Television, and we'll be back in a week. Hope you can join us then. I'm your host, Becky Kaiser. Good night.